Marvel Champions the card game. This is your review for 2. Good day, my name is Joe Gerba. Today I'll be going over Marvel Champions the card game and how it plays with 2 players. Now Marvel Champions is a 1 to 4 player cooperative game where you'll be playing against a certain villain each time, and each player will control one hero in their alter ego form as well. And they have their own deck of cards, which will be their action deck and kind of upgrades and cards they can go through the deck. And your goal in the end is to defeat the villain by reducing their hit points to 0. Now let's see a little bit how to play. So in this game, each player is going to have a hand of cards, and you're going to be playing these cards one player at a time. Powering up. Some of these cards will attack the villain. Some will thwart the schemes of the actual villain itself. As the villain moves on, he's going to put more scheme counters on certain plans that he has. And once he gets to the last plan, if there's too many scheme counters on it, then the players will lose the game. So the players will have to kind of balance, do you want to attack the villain or kind of thwart his schemes? And each player is gonna go. Some cards remain in front of you. Some cards are just events. The next player is gonna go, and along the way, you'll just be playing these cards. Each card has a power cost in the upper left, and the resource you use to pay for cards are in the bottom left of your other cards you have in your hand. So it's a pretty nice mechanic there, where you don't just get resources every turn. You have a handful of cards, which kind of are your resources every turn. Some cards may cost 4, which means you have to discard potentially 4 other cards to play that one. Other cards may give you multiple energy and so forth. And it's just kind of a pretty interesting concept as far as the resources there are concerned. Now each character will also have some traps, if you will, some obligations that'll go into the main encounter deck by the villain. And these cards they're customizable toward the actual heroes themselves, which is kind of neat. These cards are set for each time one of these heroes is played. Say you have Carol Danvers or Captain Marvel. Well, she'll put this card Family Emergency in the AI deck, which is just made for her, which I think is pretty neat. And during the villain turn, the villain will attack and or scheme depending on if the hero is in their hero form or if they're in their alter ego form. You know, Iron Man can either be Iron Man or Tony Stark. And as the game progresses, they can flip back and forth. But depending on which form they're in when it's the hero's turn, he'll either scheme or attack the hero. Now the heroes have their own lives, and if the hero reaches 0, then they are out of the game. And on the counter to that, if the schemes get high enough where all the plans for the villains have been carried out, then the villain wins. So it's a nice little balance there. So the villain's either going to scheme or attack the heroes. Now they're going to go through and there'll be boosts to that, so it'll be a tiny bit of randomness, but for the most part, you know what he will hit you with or scheme with. Depending on, it's just a card draw and the actual numbers on the cards, which is nice. And then, after that, the villain will draw some cards. These cards will be played out in front of each hero. That's where the scalability will come in. Each hero gets one of these event cards from the villain. Some of them may be minions, power-ups for the villain, or the villain just may scheme a little bit more and get closer to finishing his plan. And that's about the game in a little bit of nutshell. Let's see how it actually turned out. Now this is a Fantasy Flight game, so in typical Fantasy Flight fashion, they're going to come with a Learn to Play, which is just about your rules, an actual rules reference, which, to be honest, they do a fantastic job in Fantasy Flight to give you, when you have a certain word you're looking for, they give you a great rules reference to reference that. Rules in this game are very straightforward. It did not take us very long to learn it all. Setup for this game is not too hard. Each hero will have to take their cards and build their own deck. There's a lot of starter decks in here, And this is a living card game. And for those who don't know, it's a card game where you get a base set of cards, and then almost monthly or every couple months you can get more cards to add to your game. So yes, this is a full game in itself, but there will be more cards to kind of add on to that. And I'll get to a little bit more about that later. But as far as setup goes, you'll set it up and you have kind of 4 spheres that you can set your cards up. Each hero has a base deck, plus they get 1 sphere of cards that they can choose from, and then they can choose some basic cards. Now, I like deck builders. I love, I like getting more cards, and it's really neat. And with living card games, you know what you're going to get with each pack that comes out. However, with this game, there's not a whole lot to start your deck building with. There's a lot of options on, you choose your hero, they get their set of cards, you choose what sphere out of the 4. And other than that, there's not a whole lot of options for the actual customization yet. Now, as packs start rolling in, as cards start rolling in, you will get more options, and that'll open up a lot more about this game. Now, the setup for the villains isn't too hard either. There's a modular set that comes in, and the villain has their own set. What is nice about this game is there's a normal way to play and the expert, where the normal is a little bit easier, kind of get you started with the villain. And once you've played a few games, once you got a few under your belt, you can switch to the expert mode. And I really like that about this game. Unlike games like Arkham Horror, the card game, and Lord of the Rings, the card game, where the scenarios are pretty set up. There is an easy mode in those games, but this is, they kind of give you a normal and an expert, which is really nice with this game. The gameplay flows really well, and what I like about this is you draw your hands, and those are your resources. You could play a really high cost card, but it's going to cost you the rest of your cards, or you could play a card that'll help you in future turns, draw more cards, get more resources, but it will set you back a little bit this turn. And that's really neat about this game. I really enjoy that aspect of, you almost want to play all your cards every turn, because at the end of your turn, you'll draw back up to your hand limit. So do you really want to keep that card, or would it help you in one of those other cards really maximize your potential for the turn? And it's a nice cooperative play with the other person. I can attack their minions, they can attack mine, we can both go after. I really like this in a cooperative game. There's almost 3 resources you have to take account of. Your own life, the villain life, your hand, and then you also have the scheme. You got to make sure that the scheme doesn't get too high, and the plans for the villain aren't immediately met. So there's a lot of things to think about, and there's a lot of options, and there's a lot of choices. And one of the things that I really like about these games, with 2 people, is, especially cooperative games, are there tough choices to make? And this one, there really is. It's simple. You only have so many cards you can play. There's a set amount of combos, and it's neat to bring those all to fruition. But it's simple. But there's a lot of choices. Do I want to attack, even though I'll hurt myself for one? It'll tick one down, and that's kind of doing body shots along the way. In a boxing match, you tick them down just a couple times, it'll wear on your resources, but hopefully it'll wear on the villain's resources a little bit more. And our last game that we played, did take about an hour, but it was fun. It was exciting. We had I played as Iron Man, and at the beginning I couldn't do very much, but at the same time I was starting to gear up, and I was keeping the schemes a little bit down. I was thwarting the villain's plans while I was kind of building up, and by the end I felt like I had a little bit more of a role, where my partner was Captain Marvel and had to pick up a lot of slack at the beginning, and could put out a whole bunch of allies. And that's what was neat, is it was a great play on. There was a great, it really felt like a super cooperative game, because we really did have to work together. This game does have a little bit of luck in it. you'll be drawing cards, but there's plenty of options to cycle them, so you don't feel like you're stuck with a set amount. You get to see a lot of cards in this deck, and I love that. If you don't like the ones you have at the end of your turn, discard them and draw some more. Those cards you think are useless, they can always be used for energy. That's really neat about this game. When the villain does attack, he does a variable amount of damage. He has a set amount on his card, plus he usually gets to draw one card and add a symbol of damage to it. So it kind of gives you that little bit of variability. You can never predict exactly what the villains are going to do. And that's really neat in this game. The playtime took about 40 minutes to an hour, depending on how much we built up beforehand. Rhino was the intro kind of villain, and pretty straightforward in these games. And it was those went a little bit quicker. He just had one plan, and kind of to get through, either had to beat him up twice, which is really neat about these villains, is they almost have two stages. You beat them up once, and then you beat them up again, and usually on that second one they give you a little bit extra flavor, and that's really neat about this game. Another point is the flavor on the cards, the flavor in the scenarios is not there. There was no actual text. However, it really did feel thematic when I was Iron Man gearing up my suit, or when we had Captain Marvel, charge one of her punches and do a whole bunch of damage to the villain. The text flavor in this game is not there, but man, the card titles, the characters you see, the abilities, the upgrades, it really does kind of feel like you're in a Marvel movie. And that about this game is I really like with two players, is you have that almost, I need to go turn into my alter ego for a few minutes. Can you handle the villain by yourself? And you can almost like tell the other person, take a little bit of damage, do a little bit of damage. Captain Marvel's off fighting while Tony Stark is, preparing his suit, or, Peter Parker is resting, and, Aunt May's, give him a little bit extra life at the end. All those little flavors after seeing all the Marvel movies really help this game out. And it feels thematic, even though there's not links and pages of story. Each game you play it does feel like a full story, and that's really neat about this game. Is it just flows like a comic book, and I love that about this. Now I will say one thing about the replayability. This game is a full game in the box. It comes with 5 heroes, 4 spheres with enough cards to make a 4-player game. But with 2 players, it does have enough customization. You can, get all the cards that you want to. All the cards are included in this, so you don't have to get 2 base sets, which is really nice for a Fantasy Flight. Thank you for doing that. And that's great. It comes with 3 villains with a couple different packs you can put in. You can either have a whole bunch of minions, or a whole bunch of bombs, like a bomb scare, while you're putting these villain decks together. And I think that's really neat. However, with the 3 villains, once you beat one, and then, once you beat Rhino, and then once you beat the Claw, and then once you beat Ultron, the only other thing to do in this game is to either replay those scenarios or go to expert mode. So they give you variability in some of the cards, but the replayability may be a little bit lower than expected. There are a lot of cards in this game, but there aren't like a ton. You can't deck build, like I said earlier, as well as you'd really like to until more packs come out, which we'll see when the new Captain America pack comes out, how much that really adds to the variability of this game. But this isn't one of those games that you can play for a couple hours and then put it away for a while and then play for a few more hours and get, that replayability going. We've had this game for a few days now, and we've played, probably about 8 times or so. And I really like this game, but I'm afraid we haven't beat Ultron yet. I'm afraid once we do beat Ultron, it'll be, well, that was fun, and now we put it up until the next villain pack comes out. So how does it end up with 2? I really like this game. I don't want to give it, the top marks as a staples. It'll be in my collection forever. But for now and for the next few packs, villain packs and hero packs, this will be in my 2-player arsenal because it's just thematic in the way you go. It's fun, it's quick, it's got the resources that are all over the place. It's not that hard to set up, the rules aren't that bad, and it feels like a good game. Now, as I said earlier, it doesn't feel like a complete game because it almost wants you wanting more, which is exactly what they want for a living card game. So once again, just know what you're getting yourself into when you're getting this. Is it can be, a great few games, but if you want more, you're going to either have to wait for more or just buy more packs when they do come out. And this $60 game or $50 game may turn in to a much more expensive game as you keep on adding these packs. But I really like this game. It's fun. It'll be on my table probably, for at least another week. We'll just be playing it. We'll be getting through. We're going to beat Ultron, and we're going to try expert mode and keep on trucking along. So thanks for watching, and until next time.